So everybody can hear me okay? So I titled this talk, Change, Connection, and Concentration. But it's really, I was inspired by a quote that I heard last month when we were traveling, visited with the, we were visiting with the Beginner's Mind Sangha in Boise. And the woman that was facilitating quoted a quote from Jane Hirschfield. And it was just so, I don't know, it struck me as just so important because it seems to encompass all of what we're doing in Zen Buddhism. So what she said was, Zen comes down to three things. Everything changes, everything's connected, pay attention. I just have been thinking about that ever since I was there. It's like a month. It's become like a mantra for me. And it seemed that everything I was thinking about, everything I was hearing, was connecting with that. It was all just kind of coming together. So I thought that what I would do tonight is replay, kind of recall the last two Sundays, the talks that were given, and see how they have each come together to illuminate this quote. So I know some of you might have been here on July the 3rd, the first Sunday, but I suspect not many of you were here because it was July the 4th weekend. But on that day, thinking about Independence Day, Cornell and I decided to do a kind of an interactive talk about the fact or the realization, are we really independent? How really independent are we? And so that was kind of the way our talk went. We wrote responses to 4 questions, and I'm going to give you some time to think about those questions, and then you'll get a sense of what we did. The first question was, who do you depend on? So when you think about that, probably you think about your loved ones, your friends. But if you expand a little bit, you can think, well, you depend on farmers that grow the food. You depend on the transportation people that get the food to the grocery store. Who else do you depend on? Do you depend on the person who always is at the grocery store to check you out? Do you depend on a mechanic who fixes your car? If you let yourself think, and just keep moving out and out, you'll create a really long list. The second question was, who depends on you? What we discovered when we did this together is that a lot of times it's the same people. We depend on, we know that our family and friends depend on us, so that's who depends on you. And in fact, the farmer depends on you, because if you don't buy the food, he's out of work. And in a lot of ways, we began to see how these two things connect. Who you depend on and who depends on you are very often the very same person or persons. The next question was, what do you depend on? Well, now we're thinking about organizations or nature. We depend on the sun, the rain, which we would love to see. We depend on the air, the water. We depend on the trees, the flora, the fauna, all of it. We depend on all of that. And then we also depend on things like the water department, the electricity people. You know, that list is, what do you depend on? And of course, my list included the Sangha. Then the next question is, what depends on you? And again, what we noticed is that that's very often the same list. The earth depends on you, on us. Water resources, the climate, it all depends on us. And all of these companies that we talked about, that we listed, also depend on us to buy their products or to use their products. So when we looked at these questions, who do you depend on? Who depends on you? What do you depend on? And what depends on you? What we discovered is that they are very much linked. They are interconnected. So this part of the quote, everything's connected, became really obvious to us when we started making those lists. I want to pause here and see if you have any comments or anything you thought of that is an answer to these questions. What do you depend on, or what depends on you? Okay, let's pretend that was a metaphorical question. So.
I had something.
Oh, good.
I was just thinking, like, when I was a kid, I used to ask for a lot of things. Like, I always say, Dad, can I have some chocolate? Can we go to the skate park? Can we do this or that? And his answer was always, it depends. It depends. And I would always say, well, what does it depend on? Right. And that question is just kind of coming up to me right now. Like, what does it depend on? That's kind of a cool, introspective, contemplative little exercise there. So thanks.
Thank you, Nick. Anybody else online want to speak up? Okay. Yes.
When I look at schedules like the Dallas Meditation Center, I see it online, and when I come here at a particular time, I depend on it's in Canada.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You also depend on the fact that we're online, so you can check it out. Yeah.
And structure, just societal structure, which is a bit rigid, but I'm also trying to go with the flow.
Yes, Luke.
This is Luke bowing in. I also can't help but think of one or me depending on my body, and also my body depending on how it is treated by me, what I put into it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good one. Yes, Alex.
My thoughts went into it looks like the connections in our age are becoming much broader than they used to be. So probably thousands of years ago, you would know a limited number of people in your tribe, and then it was, towns and cities and nations, and now it's global. So a virus that started in China became a threat worldwide in matters of days, weeks. And so the connections become much broader. The technology, the internet. So I was talking with a friend. He's looking for a job, and he said, "I'm competing with everyone in the U.S. because these jobs are work from home, so it doesn't matter where you live anymore."
Right.
And it used to be, okay, if you live in a certain area, you would not commute more than an hour or so, and it doesn't matter anymore. So these connections are much more broader, unpredictable, and I'm not sure we're prepared for that.
Right. Was there somebody online that wanted to say something?
I was just gonna say,
Oh,
what occurs
okay.
to me is, I depend a lot on my technology, my computer, my phone, my car. And they all require that I take good care of them,
Right.
so that they keep running.
Yes, Paul?
Somehow this popped into my head a day or two ago, but I was like, I don't think I've ever actually seen an olive tree. I've seen pictures, but I've never seen an olive tree directly. And yet, like, I can get olive oil and olives anytime I want. And that's just kind of an amazing miracle. And obviously, that depends on so many people to kind of make all that supply chain distribution stuff work. But yeah, the fact that we can get foods from anywhere on the planet.
Grapes from Peru, avocados from Mexico. Well, this is great. Anybody else want to chime in? Yes, Beth?
My clients depend on me, but I depend on them too, because without them, I couldn't pay my mortgage.
And the person who holds your mortgage depends on you, and you depend on, yeah. You can see, like Alex was talking about, it just grows and grows and grows. And so it comes down to the fact that we are inextricably linked to everything. Everything. It's what Ty coined the word interbeing for, helping us recognize that we are with the whole universe. So that's the part of connection. Everything's connected. And when you start looking at it like that, you will, I think, just continue to be astonished. So that was that Sunday. And then last Sunday, we had a special guest, Galen Godwin. Galen talked about what she called mind snags. Little things that kind of snag your mind and kind of send you off on a tangent. For instance, she used the example of the sleeves on her robe, which are quite long, much longer than this. And she said one day she was going out the door and her sleeve, her long sleeve, snagged on a door handle, like the door handle we have there. And so she said she looked at that as an opportunity to notice what was snagging her and to use it as an opportunity for mindfulness. Whereas it would be easy, for me at least, to snag my coat or my purse often gets snagged on things, and to be disgruntled about it, like, ugh, or something worse. So, that really resonated with me as well, because I recognize that I have these little mind snags all the time. And instead of being aware of it, I tend to go off on that tangent, making up stories, excuses, reasons, getting frustrated, whatever. It's just endless where these little snags can take me. Mostly they're habitual thoughts that wants to grab your attention. maybe a distraction that takes you out of the present moment. It could be a frustration that's a snag. I thought about this, what is my mind ordinarily snagged on? And for me, I think most of my mind snags are related somehow to future events. Could be very immediate future, but it's still in the future. It could be something mundane, like doing the wash. I will start that project, and then my mind gets snagged into some kind of future that takes me off on another chore, and I forget about the clothes and the dryer. It's, that simple stuff. What I've been trying to do is recognize when that happens and just kind of turn the switch and say, okay, but I'm going to finish this first. I don't know how long that will last, but it surely is working for the last few days. That future snag is a really old habit for me. It's a very habitual thing. I know that pretty much as long as I can remember, I've been not rushing somewhere. Well, I used to rushing into the future. Now my mind just wants to go there, even though my body is here. So my mind wants to go there instead of be here. And so that's an old habit, which I'm recognizing more and more. I'm doing my best now to catch those things when they happen. And what I've realized is that these habit snags, these future snags, also contribute to my tendency to procrastinate. So if I'm thinking about some future thing while I'm doing something else, then it's easy to just leave that and try to do something with whatever this future thought is. And so this thing I was working on gets put off. And then when I come back to it, it's late, I have to hurry, that sort of thing. So I'm recognizing that these snags that I'm calling future snags, these mind snags, are really inhibiting my ability to progress, to learn, to finish things, and to let go of the frustrations caused by procrastinating. The other thing that I know about myself is that I am really, really curious about a lot of things. A lot of things interest me. And so it's easy to get distracted when I see something or hear about something that I'm curious about. I want to know about it. I want to learn something about it. I want to hear about it. So that can actually be another one of those mind snags. So I have now decided I need to be careful. I need to be curious about these mind snags and be careful that I don't inhibit my curiosity, because I feel like that's a good thing. So I don't want to become not curious. However, I don't want that curiosity to distract me. So there's kind of a little middle way there that I'm trying to navigate. So those snags are an example of the pay attention part of that quote. Everything changes, everything's connected, pay attention. Those little snags are ways to help us pay attention. I would like to do a little activity with you, if you're willing. Simple. What I'm going to ask you to do is stand up and just walk somewhere else in the room than where you're sitting. And people at home, you can do the same thing. Just walk somewhere else in your room that you don't usually go to. And just look around and see what you notice. So let's all stand up and just mosey around the room. Maybe y'all use the bell to say stop. And then I'll give you a chance to notice what you're seeing there or what you're feeling as you are there. So let's just stop where you are and look at whatever is there. What are you seeing? Are you seeing that stuff you never saw before? Are you noticing things you hadn't noticed before? And look who's around you, not the same people you were sitting with, except for Chris and David. So does this kind of change your perspective a little bit? I'm not going to ask you to sit somewhere other than where you were, but in workshops I've been in, people were instructed to not return to the same chair so that you would have an opportunity to see other people and get acquainted with things in another way. Okay, let's move one more time. Just go a little bit. You can walk in between the cushions if you want to. I see the person doing that. All right, let's stop. Now what do you see? Are you seeing a part of the room you hadn't seen before? This is all about everything changes. And also everything's connected. Because we're all still here in this room. We're all still connected to the people online. So let's return to our cushions and chairs. And I'd like to hear what that experience was like for you. Anybody want to talk about what you experienced? Yes, Luke?
One of my favorite observations is what appears to be a space heater back there, which is like an artifact from another time, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe somebody would need that in here, but if they get cold easily, but it's like kind of a way for me to appreciate like, oh yeah, other, you know, climate systems exist around here sometimes. And like, it's just like, it's cool that people are in here, like when it's cold out too. And it's like, you know, it's kind of a seasons changing kind of reminder.
Great, thank you. Lisa, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I noticed, and this is appropriate too with the snags. The first place I landed was right here, and I felt really anxious. Like I'm standing where you were sitting, and I get really easily snagged by that.
Oh,
That was interesting.
yeah, very interesting. Yes, Chuck?
As I moved around, you start to look at new things that you never noticed before, because one thing about sitting in the same place and moving the same way all the time is you see the same things, and after a while you don't notice them any longer.
Mhm. Yeah.
Wondering what's in that basket on top of the
That is actually a rock salt lamp,
Oh.
which is not turned on at the moment. Anything else? What about all of you people online? So maybe a little harder to do that at home. Did you want to say something, Patrick?
Well, I thought Nick was gonna.
I noticed the frames on these pictures that I have in my room, in my office. There's just these patterns on the wood that I didn't ever notice before, which is pretty cool. And I noticed that during walking meditation, sometimes like just stopping and looking at the wood patterns are really, really cool and intricate. Sometimes you should just pause and notice that.
Yeah. Well, maybe try this at home, you know, go stand in a corner you don't usually stand in and see what's happening over there. Don't worry too much if you find spider webs. All right, so in addition to touching on everything changes, Galen also touched on, well, no, I said that backwards. In addition to connection, Galen touched on everything changes a little bit. She reminded us that we are all unique. There has never been, nor will there ever be, anybody exactly like you or me. So thinking about that and thinking about how even as we change, we're still unique. Our cells are changing at this very minute. We're not the same people we were when we came into the room. We won't be the same when we leave because our bodies have been growing, changing, decaying. So everything changes bit is, I think, easy for us to think about. We think we understand it, but if we look a little deeper, we will notice things just like the perspective idea. We will notice things that we hadn't thought about before. We will get some insight into the reality of what that means, everything changes. I thought about when I was writing this, what about clones? But the fact is that even though clones look pretty much the same, there are slight differences in the DNA. So a clone is not exactly, it cannot be a total replica of whatever the original animal, plant, whatever the original was. Here's another example of everything changes. I heard this quote, which I've not been able to find. I don't know who said it, but it might be related to a poem by William Blake. Anyway, the quote was, "Moving one grain of sand, I changed the entire universe." Moving one grain of sand, I changed the entire universe. That might be a derivative of Blake's poem where he said, "To see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour." I'm going to come back to this idea of moving one grain of sand, but making it a little more personal. There is a quote from a guy named Johann Gottlieb Fichte. He said, you could not remove a single grain of sand from its place without thereby changing something throughout all parts of the immeasurable whole. This is from the 1800s. people have been observing this and thinking about it for a long time. When I think about that, moving anything, even a little bit, changes everything. It kind of blows my mind. I accept it, but I can't get around it. And this is exactly what the Buddha taught 2,700 years ago. And Thich Nhat Hanh used that word interbeing to describe our connection to everything. In the Buddhist teachings, one of the things that we occasionally talk about is something called the 5 remembrances. These are the fact that no one is immune from illness. No one can escape death. Everybody we know and love is also susceptible to being ill and dying. And the only thing we have as our legacy is our actions. So it is our actions that create these changes we're talking about. And, you know, I can think about this. When somebody is really, really kind to me or pays me a compliment, that action makes my day. And I noticed also in the grocery store, if I catch somebody's attention, often people are just doing this. But if I catch somebody's attention and smile, they smile back. This action, even a small action, changes the environment. It changes who we are. So our actions are our only legacy. We're not going to live forever. My friend Tashi says the mortality rate is 100%. So we're not going to live forever. And while we are here, we are having an impact on other people we meet and people we don't even know and will never meet. Everything in the universe goes through these same procedures. Everything, thinking about a star, for instance, I guess a star doesn't get sick, but it deteriorates over time, a long time, but still, even stars can die. And so everything, the plants that we have, you know, the orchid is in the process of dying. This plant looks pretty good, but plants die, they get sick. So everything in the universe is living by these very same facts. So there's no escape change. And change makes a difference in the connection. It's all tied together. So just to wrap up, everything changes. That's pretty easy for us to understand. Although a lot of the time we live as if nothing changes, or we live life for nothing to change. Everything's connected. It's also pretty easy to grasp, even though, again, we can easily forget about that part. Pay attention. This is the one that I think is the most challenging for me, and maybe for all of us. Pay attention. Attention is not that easy to tame or control, but we do have some excellent teachings and practices in our in our Sangha, in our Buddhist practice, that can help us build strong concentration, which is like paying attention, and focus. We can really train ourselves in these concentration and focus skills that will help us pay attention. So I just wrote down a few things that helped me. And if you would, when we're done, we'll have time to share, and I'd love if you would share something that works for you. So the first thing I wrote was remember to breathe and be aware of your breath. That when I can remember to breathe and be aware of my breath, everything gets better. Everything gets better. And the second one is something that works for me, maybe not for you. But I wrote, be curious about what snags you. And I like to say be curious because I don't want us ever to get judgmental about it or critical about it. I don't want us ever to criticize ourselves. That's just another snag. So just be curious about it. See what you notice. This is pretty much what I just said, but be kind to yourself. You're a work in progress. Meditate. Whether sitting, walking, working, see if you can sometimes, occasionally, live as if life is an evolving meditation. And really just occasionally. Don't, again, because if we say, oh, I'm going to be mindful this whole day, well, it's kind of a setup, because I don't know very many of us that can do that. So just take a few minutes out of a day and see how mindfully you can live in that 30 minutes or 15 minutes. Do try to think of it as a meditation so that your mindfulness really kicks in. So last of all that I thought about, remember that who you are and what you are contributing to this connected universe is important. It's very important. What you do and say, how you act, it's important. It matters. So do your best to contribute lovingly to yourself and everyone else. What are some things that help you to remember to pay attention, to change, and connection?
I know I like to do what you do as well, to breathe. But before I do that, I always remind myself to relax. And when I feel like the trigger or the snag, relax first and then breathe. And that kind of helps my mind get out of the seriousness, whatever. And then another thing that helps me to be mindful is to, like, whatever may be important, and I hear myself saying it, to see if I'm acting on it, so it's kind of like and also if I say I'm going to do something, to do it. So, you know what I mean? It kind of leads me into staying into my connection to self or whatever contribution, that I'm going to put it into action rather than just waiting for something to happen, or just ideas. But no, if it's something that's important, that helps me focus and concentrate. I will make the action.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, Chris.
And pay attention. Keep getting, there's like a dot, 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 and it's to the heart, like not to the mind. It's stopping the noise in the mind and like tuning into the heart. So whenever you say pay attention, I hear to the heart and not up here, but trying to focus there to find decisions and choices and direction and whatever it is, just paying attention to the heart.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that, I'm gonna add that to my list. And I thought, what Paula was talking, I thought about smile.
Joyce.
Yes, Joyce?
Oh, like if I write down 3 things that I seem to have a hard time, I keep procrastinating. And then on a day, write those 3 things down and then paying attention, how many things continuously draw me away or distract my ego or something like that. And then paying attention, oh, that's why I keep feeling it's consistent and trying to break that pattern.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what snags you. Yeah. Yes, Lisa?
I think reminding myself to be here now, especially when I'm up in my head, and using what I see or what I hear, what I feel, to do that. And then also there's this imagery that I've developed over time, just that, you know, there's the water and the waves, and underneath there's this stillness. And the stillness, initially when I developed that imagery, I felt like it was tapping into stillness within me, but the more I have read and sort of absorbed, it feels like that stillness is connecting to the ocean, which is everything. And that's really powerful for me to dip into that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's recognizing your connection to everything. So when you get still, it radiates. And when things around you, people around you are still, yeah, that's a beauty of Sangha, I think, because we can come and be still with one another and just really rest. Yes, Beth.
I use affirmations to remind myself that we're all connected, but I also have little synchronicity kind of experiences where I'm thinking about someone and then they'll call me, or I'll call someone and they'll say, I was just thinking about you. So those kinds of experiences remind me that we're connected. I very much like science, and I remember when I was taking some chemistry classes a number of years back, one of the professors was saying that Einstein, one of his theories or discoveries was that electrons that associate, so we're all made of electrons and protons and neutrons, but electrons that associate spin together in the same direction regardless of distance. And so if you have had a close association with a person or a friend, your electrons are associated. And then when you travel across the country, you're still connected. So it's just very interesting. I like to think about things like that.
Yeah, that's great. There is a group with a website called Heart Math, and they have done experiments like that, which demonstrate that our heart field is huge. We are all sitting in a heart field that we've all collectively made together. And they demonstrated also that you can be separated by long distance and still be very connected. Yes, Jen?
I also feel pay attention is very important. It is both a spiritual practice, a life skill. For example, in William Blake's poem, To See the World in a Grain of Sand, is when you pay attention, you see how we are all interconnected and that we are the interbeings with the universe and with each other. That's the spiritual aspect of it. And also it is a life skill, and especially when we get older, we are more tend to be forgetful. Like I forget about where I park my car. I forget about people I met because I haven't paid enough attention. So paying attention is both a spiritual practice and a life skill that I think it's very important for all of us.
Thank you, Jen. Yes, Luke.
So I'm not sure exactly which part of the question this addresses, but something that's been interesting me is how things that we perceive as not good, we also depend on kind of as much as we do the things that we talked about, like mostly in kind of good context earlier. Kind of like how we depend on mind snags to even have a practice, basically, because without that, we really don't have to try. And then kind of like I've been thinking about since Galen's talk last week, we also depend on people we may perceive as bad because without them, we don't have a reference point for what's good. And we also don't have kind of those mind snags in the form of people to cause like more practice in our daily lives.
Yeah, good point. We don't grow unless we have some kind of adversity. We grow because we suffer, whether it's tiny bit of suffering or enormous suffering. But we don't grow unless we challenge a little bit, getting us out of the comfort zone. Okay. Anything else? Well, thank you so much for all. Sorry, I keep getting distracted by these little things that are on the screen. Thank you for being here and thank you for participating. Thank you for your sharing. It was all very, very lovely and helpful. So I hope you have enjoyed the talk and your sharing and your time with us. It's really been great, I think. So we're going to close with our closing chant.